Welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we're going deep, really digging into a part of Siddhartha Gautama's life that, well, it often gets overshadowed by the huge spiritual journey later on. We're talking about his time as a husband and a father, married to Princess Yashodhara.
Yeah, and we actually have source material that lets us, unpack this incredibly human, really personal period.
Right.
We can explore their love, what life was like for them in the palace, and how this whole foundational experience profoundly shaped the path he eventually chose.
Absolutely. So our mission really in this deep dive is to understand the life Siddhartha built and then chose to leave behind.
It's quite something when you frame it like that.
It is. It's about seeing the real human connections woven into that life, the love, the duty, the affection, and maybe most importantly, appreciating the story of Yashodhara herself. She's often just a footnote.
A very poignant story.
Exactly. By getting this foundation, this life before the great renunciation, we get a much fuller picture of his whole journey. It's kind of your shortcut to grasping that crucial beginning.
Okay, so where do the sources start their story? Usually with the marriage, right?
Yeah, they tell us Siddhartha and Yashodhara were cousins.
And the union was, well, likely arranged. Pretty standard for royalty back then.
Standard royal match, yeah. But what's interesting is how our sources seem to emphasize it wasn't just that, not just politics.
Right. There are accounts suggesting, genuine affection, real warmth between them.
And those stories, we hear these like vivid tales of young Siddhartha showing off in contests, archery, wrestling, horsemanship.
Supposedly to win her hand specifically.
Exactly. It paints this picture of a young guy who's not just fulfilling an obligation. He's eager to impress her, wants to earn the right to marry her.
And Yashodhara herself, how is she described?
Oh, consistently. Not just beautiful, though, that's always mentioned, but also intelligent, virtuous, someone of real substance.
So even though it was arranged, the sources frame it as this joining of two pretty extraordinary young people destined for something significant together.
It's a powerful thought, isn't it? That even someone who achieves such, well, immense spiritual heights still experience those universal things, young love, marriage, hope, just like, you might.
Makes the story relatable on a different level.
Definitely. So after the wedding, what was life like then?
Well, the sources describe their life unfolding inside the Kapilavastu palace walls.
Opulent place, by all accounts.
No, incredible luxury, yeah. But it was a blend, right? Princely duties mixed with the intimacy of, starting a family.
An account suggests Siddhartha was pretty engaged in that life.
Yeah, it seems so. I mean, he was famously shielded from seeing suffering outside the palace.
Right, the whole setup by his father.
Exactly. But inside the walls, he fulfilled his role. He was part of court life, discussions, and importantly, sources portray him as a loving husband during this time.
And then, the big event.
The birth of their son. Yes, Rahula. Must have been a moment of profound joy, forging this really deep, tender bond.
Now, the name, Rahula, it gets talked about a lot.
It does. It's often noted that it can mean fetter or impediment.
Which sounds quite negative looking back.
Well, exactly. That interpretation is almost always viewed through the lens of Siddhartha's later departure.
Ah, okay. That's a really critical distinction the sources seem to be making.
Yes, because while the name might seem symbolic in hindsight, you have to remember at the time, before he left, Rahula was just this cherished child.
Deeply loved. The affection must have been immense.
Absolutely. His leaving later, it wasn't a rejection of his family, not a rejection of that love.
So what was it then, according to the sources?
It seems it stemmed from this dawning, profound realization that even these beautiful, cherished bonds, the very connections he clearly valued deeply were, like everything else, ultimately impermanent.
Part of the cycle.
Part of the cycle of existence, yeah. The one he sought to understand and eventually transcend. Not just for himself, but for everyone. The understanding was that attachment itself, even to loved ones, binds us because things change, things end.
Wow. Okay. So that brings us, inevitably, to Yashodhara.
Her story, especially after he leaves.
It's portrayed as one of just incredible strength, quiet fortitude. It runs through so many accounts.
Can you even imagine?
No. Waking up, husband gone, father of your child, just vanished in the night, no warning, no goodbye.
The source is painted as this just unfathomable shock. A young mother left completely alone.
A personal tragedy, really.
Absolutely, and yet the accounts seem unanimous on her reaction. She bore it with this incredible dignity.
Didn't crumble. Didn't lash out, apparently.
No, and made a conscious choice. She didn't remarry. She dedicated herself entirely to raising Rahula, and by all accounts did so with grace and wisdom.
And this is where her story gets even more, well, remarkable based on these sources.
Her own practices.
Yeah. They recount her adopting practices that sort of mirrored Siddhartha's path, wearing simple, undyed robes, eating only one meal a day.
It wasn't just like passive waiting, was it? It feels like an active response.
Exactly. A way to stay connected, maybe. Or perhaps trying to understand from afar the path he'd chosen.
It really speaks volumes about her character. The sources don't just portray her as a wife left behind.
No, she becomes this spiritual figure in her own right, undertaking her own kind of renunciation, even while still in the world, in a sense.
Her story becomes one of this enduring love, sure, but also immense resilience. And many accounts suggest it led to her own awakening years later, actually following his spiritual footsteps.
Her quiet dedication, it's legendary. It embodies this profound inner strength, a spiritual depth that was forged in, well, intense personal sorrow.
Okay, so let's loop back. How did this whole period, the love, the marriage, being a father, how did it actually impact Siddhartha's big spiritual journey? Was it, necessary?
Our sources seem to strongly suggest it was absolutely essential, foundational even.
How so?
Well, the idea is to truly get the nature of suffering, you first have to intimately experience its opposite: joy, connection, attachment, the sheer beauty of human bonds.
Okay. So his deep love for Yashodhara and Rahula gave him that baseline.
Exactly. It let him fully understand the human condition, the potential for joy, but also the inherent pain of separation, the fact that even the most cherished things don't last forever, impermanence.
Which gives his eventual renunciation so much more weight. Meaning.
Right. He wasn't someone walking away from nothing.
Not at all. The sources depict him as having everything by conventional standards: loving family, kingdom on the horizon, comfort.
And he chose to leave it all, not as a rejection of love itself, the sources clarify, but as this radical act to find a universal solution to suffering for all beings, not just him.
So experiencing family life, it actually humanizes him for us, for you, the listener.
Totally. His journey from loving husband and father to this enlightened being, it makes that transformation and maybe the possibility of that path for anyone feel more relatable somehow, more powerful.
And the core message here from the sources seems to be that the path to awakening isn't about, shutting down love or connection.
No, not shunning it.
It's about understanding its true nature, its impermanence, and then transcending attachment.
The clinging part.
Exactly. Finding a deeper, more expansive kind of compassion that includes everyone, not just your immediate circle.
So wrapping this deep dive up,
Yeah.
what's the main thing to take away?
I think it's that the story of Siddhartha and Yashodhara really shows how even these monumental spiritual quests are built on the messy, beautiful foundation of human experience. Love, connection, loss. It's all part of it.
And Yashodhara really emerges in these accounts as this unsung heroine. Quiet strength, enduring spirit, finding her own way.
Definitely. A powerful figure in her own right.
Which leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? A question maybe for you to ponder. How can we, or how can you, hold a profound love and connection in your life, while also fully understanding their impermanence? How does cherishing the beauty of these moments, these people, how does that differ from the kind of attachment that the sources suggest can bind us to suffering?
That's a deep one. What does that distinction mean for your own journey?
Something to mull over.
Indeed. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive.